Joining us now, Delroy Burton, chairman of the D.C. Police Union. And Mr. Burton, I think we've had you on about the body cameras back when this was first proposed. And if memory serves, you and your organization are not necessarily opposed to this. In fact, I think that you were somewhat positive in terms of this being able to be a tool to show that the police are doing a great job out there, right?
That's correct. Good morning, and thank you for having me on.
Morning.
We are in support of the body camera program, and the initial proposal by the department was to incrementally roll this out over a 3-year period. And what the mayor has proposed to speed it up to 18 months is going to present some logistical problems for the agency.
Well, what are the logistical problems?
Well, number one, we don't have all the infrastructure that is required to operate 2,800 cameras. We don't have the storage capacity. And the big issue that's being discussed right now is the availability of those videos through the Freedom of Information Act.
Well, and that's what we wanted to get into for a moment.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I mean, what do you say to the mayor's statement there that the public should have an expectation of privacy, and so there's not necessarily going to be total transparency?
There is no expectation of privacy in a public place. So I think she's incorrect on that. If a police officer is legally somewhere, our position is if we're having a body camera program, they should have the camera on. And we believe that the public should have access to that video as long as it's not a piece of evidence. There are no other privacy concerns that are restricted under the current FOIA system.
So you would be in favor of, let's say, you make a traffic stop, and if the media came and said, we want the video from that traffic stop, and all that really happened there is you gave the person a traffic citation, that should be available to the media if they want it?
Absolutely. It is a public record. The district residents own that record, subject to the restrictions that are within the law. The problem that the department will have is a serious logistical problem. So if the mayor is serious about accelerating this program, she needs to come up with funding to build the internal infrastructure to allow the department to be responsive to the media, to the public, and to entities that want to view these documents, because they are going to have to hire additional staff, probably additional attorneys to do the screening and to do the redaction. That's the technical stuff, to redact, take out sound, blur faces that aren't involved, blur license plates, that kind of thing. So there are legitimate logistical problems.
Well, now, hold on. This is interesting to me, and it's good to know that the police union is on board and actually advocating that this stuff is completely transparent and we want these videos out there. Let's go back to this traffic stop situation. Let's say there isn't a citation. Let's say the police have an encounter with the citizen and there's no actual official act committed. No citation, no nothing. Why should that be public? And by the way, you just said that you would blur out the faces of some people who were not involved. Why blur out those people's faces if they're on a public street? Why should we blur them?
But those are some of the privacy concerns. I'll give you an example. If we took a police report and it has information, identifying information, addresses, and that type of stuff, it is a public document. However, we do want to protect that person's right to privacy. So we would redact the person's identifying information, birth date, telephone numbers, and things of that nature. So we would want to do the same thing. We want to redact the video so that you can't see the tag number, anything that would provide the person's name. So we're talking about removing some sound. So that's the technical side that we're talking about.
So here are a couple of things that come to mind in our discussion yesterday. What if you are called in on a rape case and your body cam captures the victim? Would that person's video then be available?
No, because that's evidence.
All right, so
we don't release evidence now.
All right, so then that's so many more questions. If you're involved in a police shooting, that's evidence, but that would also be something that the public would be very interested in.
It would be subject to release based on the rules of evidence. And we don't release information now about shootings because it is evidence, and FOIA has an exception for ongoing criminal investigation. So those types of material don't have to be released right away. Eventually, once the cases are closed, then that information can be released.
But in the case of, for instance, the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson, Missouri, it would have been very advantageous, I think, in terms of the media attention and also the much of the public
the
outrage. Yes,
yeah.
if there was a body camera, of course, in this case there wasn't. But if there had been a body camera, wouldn't it have been advantageous to get that video out there well before the case was closed?
It would be, but remember the limitations of video. Video gives you a particular point of view, and then it's also subject to interpretation. There are a lot of individuals who believe that video is the answer and the end-all for everything. It is not. It is just a portion of the evidence in any particular investigation. I mean, a good example of that is the Eric Garner case. Everybody thought because there was video in that case, they had all the answers. And that video, what the video showed, is not how everyone interpreted it.
Uh-huh.
So, video is a great piece of evidence. It's a great tool to help us to capture what happened, but it's not. It's about the interpretation of what happened, particularly when you talk about use of force.
So it sounds to me, and please, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and our guest is Delroy Burton, chairman of the D.C. Police Union. It sounds to me like you do agree there should be certain limitations under certain conditions with regard to the release of this information. It's not just a blanket transparency. Am I right in saying that it would be on a case-by-case basis?
No, not on a case-by-case basis, but subject to the rules of the Freedom of Information Act statute under D.C. law.
All right.
I'm not.
Which does allow you to hold back stuff that might be used as evidence in a court case.
Correct.
Wow.
So what I'm opposed to is a blanket prohibition against releasing these things. They should be released if it can be released under the law as it currently sits. I don't think we should change the law and say this particular public record cannot be released. Any of it at any time.
I think it speaks volumes that the rank and file, and I believe as the chairman of the union, you do in many ways speak for the rank and file. The rank and file are in favor of these cameras and want that information out there whenever possible. I think that's very illuminating, actually, and it speaks well of the cops.
It's their reputation that's on the line. They're the ones that are being maligned and accused of all kinds of impropriety.
Yes.
And the whole push behind this, the emphasis for this was police accountability. How are you going to have accountability if you decide, okay, we have all this evidence, all this video, and no one can access it?
Yep.
That defeats the purpose.
Thank you. Delroy Burton, chairman of the D.C. Police Union.
Good stuff.
Always good to have you, sir.
You're welcome. You guys have a great day.
You too.